Okay, great. So the session will cover your XAT 2017 preparation strategy. So again, it's in 2 weeks. So I will just take you through whatever things you have to do in the coming 2 weeks, section wise, what all things you have to keep in mind, and how do you probably make use of these 14 days, 13 days also, and probably do well in XAT. Okay. So to start with, the pattern of the test. So the last 3 years pattern is something that we have, and XAT is notoriously known for changing its pattern every year. So we haven't really seen a couple of years wherein, yes, Parag, you have a doubt or something? Okay, okay, fine. We'll take it at the end, no issues. Yeah. So we have the pattern over the last 3 years now, and every year it has been changing. So we do not really know exactly what to expect and how exactly the paper will be. So last year XAT released the front page of the paper, and they said that there will be 23, 29, 26 questions, as I mentioned here. And that's what they gave away last year. But this year, I don't think any such thing has come out. So they have just given the front page of your OMR sheet and something like that. So again, that is there. Yeah. Parag, you want to say something? Okay. I just put you on mute. If there's anything, just put it in the chat. Okay. So again, we cannot really be sure as to how many questions will be there. But then again, you can be assured that there will be 30 questions from each and every section. So generally, they have a higher weightage to, they have given higher weights to QA DI over the last 2 years or so. 2015 and 2016, you had a lot more questions from QA DI compared to the other two sections. But then again, it doesn't really matter, because whichever section will have these extra questions, these questions will probably be unattemptable. So it will be very difficult for you to attempt these questions. So it does not really matter what the split is. End of the day, you will have a nice split between among all these three sections. Okay, yeah. So your cutoff has always been around 30 to 32 marks. So whatever be the level of difficulty of the paper, whatever be the total number of marks, whatever be the case, your cutoff will always be around 30 to 32 marks, and that would be somewhere around a 98 or a 98.5 percentile. Okay. Again, the first and foremost thing I want to point out to you is that the keys are never correct. You will never get a key which is 100% correct, except the one which is released by XAT, and XAT does not really release the keys every year. So you might not really get those keys. I have muted all of you. Okay. So in case you have any queries, just put it in the chat box. Anyway, so except the years when XAT came up with the official keys, we did not really have an idea as to what the keys will look like. And so there is this uncertainty when it comes to XAT, and especially with two sections wherein you cannot really be sure of whether your answer is right or wrong. Of course, there is a lot of uncertainty. XAT is perceived to be a difficult test simply because the split in question types is something like this. So 25% of your questions will be easy, 50% will be moderate, and 25% will be difficult. So whatever paper you can pick up, you can probably see something like this. So if you have, say, I don't know, 28 questions, then 14 will be moderate, 7 will be easy, and 7 will be difficult. Simply because this moderate part is bloated, there is this theory, or there is this perception that XAT is a difficult test. In CAT, probably you will see something like this. Your CAT will be something like a 1477. Okay, and that's why your CAT is probably said to be an easier paper, because you have 50% of the paper which a lot of people will be able to solve, and after that, the 7 questions, whatever are there, moderate level questions, that will depend on your preparation, and these 7 will of course differentiate the outliers from the rest. So that is the split. In XAT, the split is more towards the moderate side, and so people think that it's a difficult test. Okay. Coming to the section-wise strategy or section-wise overview, if you look at QADI, so earlier you used to have, you always had a QADI section. Your arithmetic reasoning and decision-making section, analytical reasoning and decision-making section were one thing, and verbal ability was standalone. But last year we saw that they combined verbal ability with logical reasoning. Now, logical reasoning is nothing but you will not get arrangement caselets and all, but critical reasoning has been termed as logical reasoning. And your decision making is now a standalone section. Coming back to QADI, In QAD, again, you can expect around 30 questions. If the trend continues, then definitely you will get 1/3 of the questions from QADI. And out of that, you will get, generally you get 2 DI sets are present. So 7 or 8 questions. So 3, 4 or 4, 4 would be the split. And the rest will be standalone quant questions. Okay. Now again, as I said, the split is nothing but it's 25, 50, 25. And because it's 25, 50, 25, you will get a lot of moderate level questions. And these moderate level questions will again come from arithmetic and geometry. So over the last couple of years, at least, we have seen that out of say 30 questions, you will have somewhere around 7 or 8 questions from geometry. You will have somewhere around, again, 8 or 9 questions from arithmetic, and the rest will be from your varied topics across PNC, probability, algebra, numbers, probably something like that, and so on. So that will probably be the split. So we can say that 50% of the paper will be from your arithmetic and geometry. Okay. So even in arithmetic, the easier questions are always from your averages, percentages, ratios, and along those lines. But in XAT, you will see a lot of questions from mixtures and allegations. So, and again, that those questions will be in depth. You will not get a single iteration question or something like that, but you will get questions which will involve 2 or 3 or probably, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times that the replacements will be done. And that makes it more difficult. Similarly, interest and growth rates. So you will get questions on simple interest, compound interest, with the numbers being not very friendly, or whatever, the compound interest accrued over 4 years or something like that, or the difference between the 3rd year and the 4th year, which makes it a bit more tedious. Growth rates, again, you might be expected to know the concepts of CAGR, at least CAGR, I hope that everyone knows. Final value upon initial value raised to 1 by n. So that is the concept that you need to know when it comes to growth rates. Even the principle of 72. So whenever you have something which doubles, so if you have a rate of interest R and it has to double in some period n, then if you have one of these, then you can always divide the other by 72 and get an approximate value. So these kind of things are very important when it comes to interests and growth rates. Time, speed, distance, time and work, again you will get a few questions. Definitely you will get a few questions. Out of this, time and work is probably the easier part. Time and work is something that will probably save you in arithmetic, because you cannot really make difficult questions from time and work unless they involve an element of geometry. So if you have an inverted cone with taps at 3 levels, then probably it's a difficult question. Then it makes sense to let go of that question. But simple standalone question wherein A will do a piece of work in some X days and B will do a piece of work in Y days, these questions are not very difficult. And so definitely, if you have something like a time and work question, then of course you have to go for it. When it comes to time, speed, distance, again, time, speed, distance will be twisted. It will not be a straightforward time, speed, distance question wherein you will get a simple, straightforward question involving races or relative speed or average speed and so on. It will always be in the form of a story, and you will have to apply a bit of knowledge. Again, the questions which are based on delays, or probably someone reaches 1 hour early and starts walking, and that other person catches that other person up at some 5 minutes earlier or something like that. Those kind of questions you will have to pay special attention to. But then again, TSD will probably almost exclusively be from linear tracks, circular tracks, or circular motion, and probably something like even an upstream, downstream. These kind of questions. So you will generally get these kind of questions. You might expect a few escalator based questions as well. So these questions will raise the difficulty level by a bit. Okay. Generally, you will get a few questions which will be straightforward. So out of 8 or 9 questions, as I said, the split, you will get some 2 or 3 questions which will be extremely straightforward, extremely easy, extremely straightforward. You have to simply apply the formula or simply observe and just write down the answer. But a lot of questions will be from moderate to difficult LOD. So these kind of questions will of course be from these topics. Okay. When it comes to geometry, again, the basic geometry concepts that you know, I think these are enough. So if you know the concepts of triangles, circles, quadrilaterals, especially trapezium, then I think you should be fine, especially regarding the easier questions. But when it comes to advanced concepts, you will need a bit of background from mensuration. So mensuration, as we had covered in the class as well, mensuration will of course involve right circular cylinders, cones, cuboids, spheres, hemispheres, pyramids, and prisms. So if you are clear with these 6 concepts, you know exactly what to expect, and you know the differentiation between faces, edges, vertices, and so on, then I think you should be fine in mensuration and the formula, because generally these questions are formula based. The tricky element will be with regard to calculation. It will not be with regard to understanding the question, but the calculation part will make it a bit more difficult. Trigonometry, again, you need to know a few things about trigonometry. At least you need to know the table, which will cover your 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45, 60, 90. That part you need to know. And you need to know the basic relationship between sine, cos, tan, cos, cosec, and cot. Okay, and including those formulae, whatever we have, sine square theta plus cos square theta is equal to 1 plus tan square theta is equal to sec square theta, and 1 plus cot square theta is equal to cosec square theta. So these things you need to know, and the formulae regarding sine 2 theta, cos 2 theta, and tan 2 theta. If you know these 6-7 things, then I think you should be fine. Regarding coordinate geometry, again, you might get a few questions on coordinate geometry. We haven't really seen a lot of difficult questions from coordinate geometry. But of course, you will need to know a few concepts. So a distance between two parallel lines, distance between a point and a line. At least these 2 concepts you would need to know. Equations of lines and all, I think everybody knows, but especially these 2 things you need to know. If you know Pick's theorem and the shoelace theorem to calculate the area, I think it's a bonus. Generally, we haven't really seen questions from Pick's and shoelace in XAT, but again, you never know what might turn. So when it comes to geometry, probably you need to focus on these kind of areas as well. So mensuration, trigonometry, coordinate geometry. If you haven't studied for CAT, I would recommend that you pay a bit of an attention to these 3 topics, especially in the coming week also. In algebra, again, you will get a few cryptic questions. You will not get simple standalone quadratic equation based questions wherein they will ask you real roots or sum of roots or product of roots, those kind of things. So generally you will not get these kind of questions. Generally your questions will involve functions. So whenever I say a function, probably you will need to apply your summation rules as well. So I hope everyone knows the summation rules for n, n square, and n cube. So n equal to x equal to 1 to n, and summation of something like this. So you might get a question like this, wherein you will have to sum all values of x from 1 till n. So summation rules, the 3 rules that are there: the sum of first n natural numbers, the sum of squares of first n natural numbers, the sum of cubes of first n natural numbers, is something that you need to know. So functions will typically involve these kind of questions. So functions, summation of functions, all those kind of things will involve these areas. And again, standalone function questions will also be there. So you might get some questions on graphs, odd function, even function, or even for that matter, simple function based questions wherein you will have to simply substitute and figure out what the answer will be. Maxima and minima, those kind of things. Okay, so you might get questions from the area of functions. So you can expect a few questions from functions. Series based questions, of course, you might get a simple infinite geometric series in various forms. So a ball dropped from a height will bounce to 3/4 of its height, and it's whatever, it has been dropped from 80 meters. So height of 80 meters. So what will be the distance covered? So if you know the shortcuts for these kind of questions, then I think you should be fine. Again, the other type of series questions is nothing but you will get an arithmetic or geometric progression. So you need to understand when to multiply it by what number. So whatever coefficients you get, you will simply keep on taking the difference. And as soon as you get the difference equal to a same, the same number, then I think you should be fine. Okay. So again, just go through your series questions once. Be prepared for series because series is generally easy. And a few times your series questions might also involve generic formulae like e raised to x or something like that. So just go through these parts as well. You will get a lot of I don't know material, but you will get standalone answers. So 1 by 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 4. All these kind of questions. So logarithm of a natural number. So it will not take a lot of time. You can just go through it. In case you do not get any material, probably I can share it with you afterwards, after the session. But again, this is something that you need to go, as in you need to expect these things when you are going to the test. Advanced logarithms, again, as I said, sum of series will also involve logarithm of natural numbers. So ln of x, you will need to know a bit about that thing. General logarithm questions are very easy. They are not very difficult. But again, the number of digits in something raised to something, or the number of zeros following the decimal, or even Josephus puzzle. So Josephus puzzle was again something that appeared in XAT. I don't remember any other test wherein that thing had appeared, but in XAT it was there. So 100 people are standing in a circle, and the first person kills the second person and gives the sword to the third person, and so on. That kind of a thing will keep on happening. So which one of them will survive? So these concepts you need to know from logarithms. I think if you know these many things, then I think you are fine. Statistics, basic stats you need to know. So mean, median, mode. I hope all of you know mean, median, mode. And after that, you need to know what exactly is standard deviation, what is deviation from mean, and what is variance. So if you know it till variance, I think you should be fine. Okay. I don't think they will give you theoretical questions based on statistics, but again, if you just have a background of statistics, if you read from your NCERT books or whatever 10 standard, 11 standard books that you have, I think you should be fine. The other important topics include base systems. So base systems, again, you might get a few questions from base systems. Typically, they have been appearing. So it's not very difficult to understand base systems, but they will disguise it in a nice manner. So there was a question once which said that there is a galvanometer or something, and it shows the reading, but it does not. It skips the digit 6 apparently, or digit 5 or something. So if that thing is skipping the digit 6, it essentially means that you are dealing in base 9 instead of base 10. But whenever we say base 9, we say that all the digits that will be present from 0 till 8. And this we define as base 9 in simple words. But the question stated that you had all the digits except the digit 6. Okay. So you had these 9 digits. So again, it was a base 9 question, but you were skipping 6. And that's why you have to be careful of the fact that if someone asks you where will be 2017, then you have to count till 2015 and then add 1 to it, because you will not be going to 2016. If you simply take the baseline value of 2017, you will not get the right answer. So that is something which you need to take care of. So base system questions will be something like this. They will not really be direct applications of bases. Nobody will ask you what is 729 in base 5 or something, but of course they can just twist the question a bit and they will try to test your basic understanding of the base system. PNC probability has not really been very difficult. Typically, you will not get extremely difficult PNC probability questions. Even conditional probability and all has not really appeared, and you need not worry about these concepts. But again, the wording will be such that, and the questions will be such that all the options, or at least 2 or 3 options, will look friendly to you. So you have to understand, again, your basics will be tested in PNC probability. If your basics are fine, you need to you know when to make selections and when to do arrangements. I think that should be more than enough. So PNC probability generally is easy, and probably you can attempt these questions. DI sets, you will get DI a couple of DI sets, and generally one of them is at least one of them is extremely difficult. So one set you can go with the mindset of solving just one DI set and letting go of the more difficult one. But again, of course, you need to be a bit open when it comes to XAT, because you might get both the DI sets to be on the easier side, and then you would not want to miss out on it. So DI and DS questions figure in this section. So DS, if you haven't prepared for CAT, because CAT did not have DS, even the other entrance tests did not really have DS except maybe an NMAT. So you will need to probably brush up on your DS skills as well. So just go through your DS videos, whatever you have, or probably you can solve a few questions from GMAT, and probably you should be fine when it comes to DS questions. DI sets, of course, if you have everything given to you, if there is a complete data set that has been given to you, a complete table that has been given to you, then I would recommend that you go for it, because it will involve calculation. If it is a plain graph-based set wherein 3 or 4 or 5 elements are compared and you simply have to figure out the trends or the ratios, again, it's recommended that you go for it. But if it is in the form of a caselet, so caselet is nothing but something which has been given in the form of text, and you have to convert that text into a meaningful representation or whatever. You have to convert it into a table or a graph in some cases. But you have to have that kind of a thing. Then I wouldn't really recommend you to do it right at the start. So if you are just starting your QADI section, and I will just give you the approximate time frame and the strategy at the end. But if you have just started your QADI section, then I won't really recommend you to go for your DI sets right at the start, probably you can go to it in the second round or something like that. DS questions, of course, as I said, you have to be ready for it. The questions are not very difficult from DS. They will be okayish questions. The only thing that you have to resist is solving the particular question. So you are not really required to get the solution. You are simply required to give the answer to the question, whether the information is sufficient or not. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and I think you should be fine with DS questions because they will again test the same concepts that we have covered in the major areas to focus. Again, 60 to 65 minutes, considering that a lot of people are good at quant compared to verbal. So a lot of people will be good at quant, and so the cutoffs for this section will probably be a bit higher than your other two sections. Generally, you can say that the sectional cutoffs are around 10 marks. So if you are getting into double digits in each of these sections, I think you should be hopeful of a quant. So again, in this case, if you are getting something about 10, say around 12, 13, 14, 15 marks, then I think you are on track to do well. Last year, I think a lot of people got about 20 as well. So the section was not very difficult. Again, the split was similar to what I mentioned right at the start. So people attempted around 20 odd questions. So I don't think it was that difficult last year, except maybe a DI set and a few quant questions. I think around 20, 22 questions were doable. So you can target somewhere around 15 odd questions, and probably you can just do it with 90 to 100% of accuracy. And considering that it's a long test, 170 odd minutes, probably you will need to be you will need to have very high levels of endurance. So again, I will cover it at the end, but this is something what the quant section could look like. Okay. Coming to the VA-LR, we do not really get a lot of LR caselets. So we used to get caselets 2010, 2011, 2012. We used to have nice LR caselets wherein 5 people are sitting or 5 bands are supposed to play, and the lead members are so and so, the color of their hair is so and so, which instruments they play. We had those kind of questions, but over the last couple of years, I guess, we haven't really seen a lot of LR questions in XAT. So arrangement-based questions are probably ruled out. You will not get a lot of questions from arrangements. Of course, this is a new year, and so we cannot really be sure, but probably you can get into that mindset wherein you will probably not get a lot of LR-based questions or pure LR questions, as we say. 50% of the section will be on reading comprehension. That is probably something which can be assumed. Again, this reading comprehension can, or the reading comprehension passages can appear in various forms, including poetry. So again, you have to be very good at understanding what has been asked and what has been said. So even in some old XAT paper, you had 2 passages, one speaking for the topic, one speaking against the topic, and then you had a set of questions. The first couple of questions focused on whatever the passage, the first part of the passage, and the other questions focused on the second part of the passage, and so on. You even had a dialogue from Matrix in 1 year, 2010, I guess, 2010 or 2011. So you get those kind of questions. So you will probably be surprised looking at the excerpt, you'll be looking at the passage. But then again, it's pretty similar to what we do in reading comprehension. So the bad thing is that it will be subjective based. The good thing is it will probably be interesting to read. So the reading part should not be a problem. The comprehension part will definitely be something that you will need to work on. Again, verbal ability as a section is extremely low on technique. So if someone has appeared for, someone appeared for CAT thinking that they are very good at verbal and they know all the grammatical rules and have a knack for reading and have a very good vocabulary, then probably that will not come into the picture in XAT, because the verbal is very low on technique, and subjectivity, logic and subjectivity will play a big role in a verbal. So we have seen people who do very well in CAT, in CAT verbal, do not that great in XAT verbal, because again, it's not very certain. And a few people who do not really do well in CAT can be hopeful of doing well in verbal in XAT. Okay, so it's not really something which you carry forward from CAT. So if you are not very confident, regarding your CAT attempt or whatever, there is no need to worry about these kind of things. You can start afresh, and probably you will do a bit better than what you did in CAT if you are strong on logic and if you can eliminate options very well. Grammar-based questions, again, we haven't really seen a lot of grammar-based questions over the years. But vocabulary and idiom, phrase-based questions, origins, or contextual meaning of words, even something like figure of speech or these kind of questions. So your fancy vocabulary questions, artful vocabulary questions, those kind of questions you might come across in that. So again, you cannot really prepare for vocabulary. Either you are good with vocabulary or you are not very great with vocabulary. Similarly, idioms and phrases, there are probably infinite idioms and phrases, and you cannot really be sure of everything. So again, it takes the preparation out of the equation. What you can do is you can go through your previous year's XAT paper. So I will come to the preparation part later, but you can have a nice list of words ready, and probably you can just refer to it and keep practicing for the 50% reading comprehension part of it and hope to do well. Critical reasoning questions have appeared, and they are similar to those in GMAT and LSAT. So CAT probably has a lot of straightforward critical reasoning questions. You will not get a lot of difficult CR questions. Similarly, in other entrance tests, wherever you get CR, they will not be very difficult. So something like say an NMAT, where you get an assumption, inference, conclusion kind of a question, or CET for that matter. These questions are not very difficult. At times they are abstract, they are random, they are not right probably. But here you will get questions which are pretty similar to those in GMAT or LSAT. Now LSAT is something which not a lot of people know about. So if you can get your hands on some LSAT material or can visit some LSAT forum and look at your critical reasoning questions, you will find that a lot of them are similar to what come in SAT. Okay, so pay attention to your LSAT part probably. If you want to practice good critical reasoning questions, you can go for your LSAT material. And that should help, I guess. Parajumbas are similar to what we expect in CAT. The added bonus being that you will get options. Hopefully you will get options. And so probably, yeah, the basics will remain the same. Finding linkages, using pronouns, identifying the tone of the passage and those kind of things. So parajumbas again should not be very difficult. RCs are short and crisp, to the point. Will have a lot of interesting bit of information, but then again they will have a lot more abstract questions than direct ones. You will seldom get a question wherein you will have to figure out which of the following 4 is not mentioned in the passage or which of the following 5 is not mentioned in the passage. So those kind of questions come rarely. Even if they come, then they will have an abstract twist to it. So they will tell you that which of the following or according to you, which of the following things will the author agree with. Those kind of questions. So again, reading the passage is not very difficult. You can read it very easily. Probably you can finish off the passage in somewhere around 3 or 4 minutes. But after that, the real test will be to understand what the author is trying to say and what the paper setter has derived from the author's, whatever the author's views are. So it's again a subject of, it's again a function of what the subjectivity of the paper setter is. But then again, you cannot really prepare for that bit. So you have to just simply keep in mind whatever you think and you have to mark accordingly. Maximizing attempts is probably a better strategy. So I don't know, I say this for each and every test. Generally, I say it for every test, but in XAT especially, I have found it to be beneficial because again, I'm not very good when it comes to, as in I don't really crack verbal like I probably do, as in I do better in the other 2 sections compared to verbal, especially in CAT. But in XAT, I have probably had a good experience with verbal, and that has probably been because I attempt everything in that paper. Even if I'm not sure of something, I will go ahead and mark it. And when I say I'm not sure, I mean that I am probably torn between 2 options. So generally, maximizing attempts will work. So probably you can try it out in a few mock tests and see what your accuracy is like. And then probably you can take a call whether to maximize attempts or to go for very few questions but do them correctly. In XAT, especially, nobody's sure what the right answer is for a lot of questions. And until the time your official key will come out, I think no institute will be able to predict your score accurately. So again, I would say that if you think that you have marked 12 questions and you think that all 12 are correct, then probably you are on thin ice. So I would recommend that you go ahead and solve at least 5-6 more questions so that you are probably in safe territory. Okay. So do not really go for that accuracy thing because I don't know if it will be, you can be certain when it comes to that. And of course, you will have a lot of time on hand. So time is not really a factor in this paper. So again, given the time on hand and given the high level of uncertainty, I would recommend that you do as many as possible. Again, the basics remain the same, right? So whenever it comes to say something like even a paragraph summary or even a critical reasoning question or even an RC question, if it asks you about an overview of the passage or probably the point of view of the author, then instead of going to an extremely specific part of it and saying that, okay, the first paragraph says these things, you can probably have a look at the overall picture, and even while eliminating options, you will have to use that strategy, and that generally tests this bit. So a lot of times you will be able to figure out your correct answer simply by using your specific versus specific and localized thing versus a generic thing. Okay, so just keep in mind this thing. Again, best of candidates, your accuracy will be around 60 to 70%. So even if you are extremely good with verbal ability, I think your accuracy will probably not cross 70-75%, unless you are, I don't know, it's your lucky day or something. Yeah. But generally for a lot of candidates, I think you can expect to be around 60 to 70% accurate when it comes to VALR. So basically, if you are solving 15 questions, you will get somewhere around 9 or 10 questions right. It's something that I feel. So 15 questions will probably not get you through. You will get somewhere around 8 or 9 marks, and it will not be enough. So probably you can go ahead and mark 20 questions, and probably if you get even 12 correct, 8 wrong, I think you are a bit safer than you would have been if you had attempted 15 questions. Ideal attempts again would be around 20, as I said. Ideal score around 10 to 11 marks, and 50 minutes, I think 50, 45 minutes, even 55 minutes, I think should be fine when it comes to VALR. Again, as I said, the time taken is probably on the sketchier side. You cannot really go ahead with a fixed strategy saying that I will give 50 minutes to this section, and you have a lot of time on hand. The time on hand will be disproportionate to the number of questions. So I think you need not worry about the time allocation situation. Just don't get carried away when you are solving the paper. So that's about VALR. So just keep these things in mind. Decision making. So again, a lot of people are extremely worried about DM, and there are a lot of courses available online which will focus on the DM part of it. And almost all these courses will focus on past year's XAT papers and past year's XAT DM questions with a few questions from 101 ethical dilemmas and so on. I don't know. See, I have never prepared for DM, to be very frank. And you cannot really prepare for decision making. It's like preparing for a psychometric test. You cannot prepare for a psychometric test. It's what you are. So even decision making is something that you are. You cannot really change yourself to get into XLRI. And if you change yourself and get into XLRI, you will probably be a misfit there. So DM is something which I don't really believe in preparing for. What you can do is you can probably again have a look at your previous year question papers, try to figure out what your answer would have been and why your answer would have been, as in why your answer would have been say X, and why the institute says that the answer is Y, or why XLRI has said that the answer is Y. So you have to just bridge that gap in thinking. Okay. Generally, what I advise is, or what I try to imagine is that you are in a room. Okay, you are in a room with all the stakeholders. So whatever. Last year we had a question on that there being 3 barbers in a particular town, and those 3 people had a fixed rate card or something, and they will not eat into the competition or something like that. They will not indulge in unfair competitive practices. So that was the case, right? And if I want to answer that question, if they have been asked that there is one barber who wants to earn more than the other 2, then what will that person do? And one option was that he will price it at a lower rate, or whatever. He will allow people to jump the queue. He will offer specialized services. He will whatever. I think there will be 2-tiered service or something like that. So we had that kind of a question, right? So what you can do is you can imagine yourself in a room. You are the decision maker in that situation. This barber has pled in front of you that probably has made a plea in front of you, that this is something which I want to do, and the other 2 barbers are also there. The entire media is there. In case you are in an organization or something, then the entire PR team is there in front of you, and then you will make a decision, and then you will make sure that people are not abusing you, or people are not hurling stones at you, or one segment of the entire group is not praising you or something like that. Okay, so you cannot really divide the house. You have to make sure that the decision is fair on everyone. Even if it is, I don't know, you might feel that one party might not really be benefited from this, but again, if they can accept it and you are on ethical ground, then I think you are fair. Okay, so probably you can keep these things in mind. instead of getting into technical details as to if this person has said this, then I will say this and those kind of things. A lot of people, a lot of faculty members will tell you to do that, but I have never seen merit in that kind of a rigid reasoning thing. Okay, you can always, it will always help you if you can just visualize the situation, imagine yourself to be in that position, and then take a call. Personal prejudices is very need to be ignored, not specific for DM, it's specific for almost everything when it comes to your MBA processes. If you feel strongly about something, if there is a case, let's say, which talks about the demonetization scenario, and they say that because of this thing something has happened. So if you have stood in a line and if you have suffered or probably fallen sick or something, then you might feel against this entire premise. But it's not really something which has to be taken at an extremely subjective level. Again, it's an objective test, so you cannot really get carried away. You have to give a balanced viewpoint. And personal prejudices, of course, it's for discussing among your friends or in your family, but it's not really for something that should come out in a test or during the interview. So as much as possible, stay neutral. Okay. The answers that are moderate in nature are better than eventualities. So eventualities generally means that there was a question in that once which said that there was a person who set fire to some other person's farm or something like that. And so what will be the course of action? So the other course of action was you go and you burn his house down. So that is not really a course of action. Although people might feel that it's good, it's not really a fair course of action, to be frank. And yeah, revenge is something that you should keep out of the picture when it comes to XAT, at least in XAT. Okay. So setting committees, talking to your seniors. So if someone has not really performed and someone is at your level, then you cannot really write a mail to each and every person in an office saying that this person is not working. You'll probably have to go to your senior and discuss. You will have to go to the decision maker and then discuss. And discussing, setting committees, conducting meetings. These things are always better than firing people, handing someone over to the police because someone is a suspect, burning houses, as I mentioned. This came from that question that was there. So again, eventualities, generally people tend to prolong your decision making thing. So prolong your decision making as much as possible and sit on the issue, get to know all the viewpoints, get everyone in at a particular level, and then try to figure out a solution instead of giving away a solution right away. Again, read the question and try to have a chain of thought of possible solutions. Yeah, this thing works because if say there are 3 barbers and you are one of them and you want to make sure that you earn more than the rest, then what is the thing that you will do? So instead of looking at the options and then trying to eliminate, okay, this is not a good course of action, this is not an ethical course of action. What you can do is you can probably think, you can list down the ideas that you feel are good for the business and then try to figure out which among them figure. If you find out that there is a better idea in an option that you would agree with, then you will mark that one as the answer. If you feel that whatever idea you had thought of right at the start, if it's an ethical thing, and again, paying attention to bullet number 2, I think you should get the right answer. So in most of the cases, you will be right. Most of the cases, you will not go wrong in decision-making cases. A lot of people are scared of it simply because it's a new thing, and I don't know you should worry about this part. This is extremely probably a fun part of the paper. The English is extremely drab. It's very sad in a way. You will probably be very careful and you will not be able to enjoy the English part of the paper. The quant again is a bit too technical for my liking, and so again you will not be able to enjoy the quant part as well. But decision making is something which you will have fun solving. That I can assure you. Irrespective of the level of difficulty of the paper, irrespective of your frame of mind, I think that DM is one part of the paper which you will enjoy solving. Okay, and again, you are getting into something which involves a lot of problem solving and decision making. So after an MBA, if you are aiming to get into the best institutes, you will face these kind of situations on a day-to-day basis. So I think you should enjoy solving this section instead of getting worried about it. And again, similar to VA, I would suggest that you attempt almost everything that you can. Okay, irrespective of whatever you feel about a particular question, because again the uncertainty will be a bit high. There will be a few questions which will have ambiguous answers. So you cannot really be sure of your answer. But then again, that's the part of that's a part of that, right? So you cannot really be sure of these kind of things. But again, fair enough. Again, I think you should attempt whatever you can in this section. typically around 25 to 30 questions will be there. So if the last 2 years trend continues, then you will have a fewer questions in DM as compared to quant and as compared to quant especially. And 6 to 7 questions involving data. So yeah, last year we had a couple of sets which involved data. So these are not your typical data interpretation or logical reasoning sets, but they are more of a logic using data kind of a thing. So there were 5 companies or 5 individuals, and the expectations of these 5 individuals were given to you, and then you have to figure out which expectations, as in if you want to hire a particular individual, then which individual will you hire for a particular job, that kind of a thing. So those kind of things can come. Or last year there was a question on crops, I think, if I'm not wrong. Some crops can be planted in the month of Jan, Feb, March, and something like that. So again, you have to be ready for these kind of questions as well. But a majority of the section will be so around 70-75% of the section will be pure DM, will be purely based on decision making, and the remaining 5-6 questions will be decision making using data. Okay. So XLRI has this course called Decision Making Under Uncertainty. So they have a couple of good faculty members for this course, and probably this is something which will reflect in this section as well. So probably you have to attempt it a bit more carefully than you would otherwise. Okay. Again, 50 minutes, 55 minutes. I think you can shorten the duration in this because you have to simply read, come to a conclusion, mark the answer. So I think around 45-50 minutes is fine. If you have 25 to 30 questions, then I would say that 15 to 20 attempts should be ideal, and 12 plus again should be a good score in this section. So overall, if you're looking at a score, 30 plus, 30 to 35 is probably something which will be on the borderline. 35 plus will be a good score. So if you look at it, and then from the macro point of view, then out of 80, if you are above 32, you are fine. So again, it's a 40% paper. And when I say a 40% paper, it is on par with the difficult CAT papers of say 2007, 2008. Okay, so these were your difficult CAT papers. So if you are at that level, if you have solved those papers comfortably, if you are at 40%, then I think you should again do well in XAT as well. So that is the kind of aptitude that is required to crack XAT. Okay. SA and GK, a lot of people don't pay attention to SA and GK simply because they are non-evaluative. So XLRI will not really consider your GK score when they are issuing out calls. It is for some other institutes that might want to use your GK scores as well. But then again, except I think the top 5-10 institutes, the other institutes don't really matter. So again, a lot of people don't really prepare for GK, and I think that is fine. I don't think it's an issue as such. But again, the GK section is a mix of your static and current GK, and if you're prepared for IFT or SNAP, I think you should be fine. So that clears the GK part of it. Yeah, if you're prepared for IFT or SNAP, I think you should be okay. The essay is something that you need to be a bit careful about, simply because first thing, I saw, or probably I've heard a lot of stories, right? A lot of students have approached me saying that they wrote their essay on the question paper itself, and they forgot to put it on the OMR sheet. So basically there will be an OMR sheet which will have two sides. On one side you will have to mark the bubbles for your GK section, the other side you will have an essay, something like that. You will not get two OMR sheets as far as I know. If you get two OMR sheets, then great, but I don't know. In case you get something like that, then make sure that you write it on that OMR sheet. A lot of people did it last year, and I don't know how that happened, but it happened in a few cases. Okay, so yeah, this is something which, yeah, designated space, this one. Okay, so 300-400 words I think is more than enough. That much will fit in that space. Simply because a page has been given to you does not mean that you have to fill that entire page. You can fill 3/4 of that page and still be okay. The essay has been with the panelists. So I have been to XLRI interviews a couple of times, and of course, my essay was there with the panelists. I could see my essay in front of them. I don't know if they read the essay and whatever, they evaluated the essay or something, that I'm not very sure about. But again, I don't think there is any specific criterion attached to your performance in the essay when it comes to your final converts. So I don't think that's a problem. I don't know a lot of people who have been asked about their essays as well. So people generally don't write very good essays. If you write a fine essay and it looks neat, and if you have had a flow to it, I think you should be fine. Okay, so you need not worry about giving current examples, writing down a lot of essays. So probably you can write 1 or 2 essays just to make sure that you get into the habit of writing, because a lot of people don't write and probably their handwriting is not that great for that reason. So instead of doing it in the exam for the first time, probably you can write down a couple of essays on your own and just figure out what all things you need to improve on, especially on the hygiene part of it. So if you are writing neatly, great. If you are writing without grammatical errors, great. If you are not making spelling mistakes, great. If you are not making a lot of corrections, great. So you have to probably keep in mind these things instead of the content. And of course, the content, you need to have a bit of content to write an essay. You can't write anything and get away with it. The structure will stay the same. You have to just introduce the topic. So the topic has been on the easier side now for a few years. So once, I think in 2011, they gave out a quote from Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, and everybody was stunned to see the quote and they didn't know what to write after that. But I think they have made the topics a bit easier now. So you will be able to write essays on these topics. Recent examples, if you can remember something like that, then great. A lot of people will write about demonetization, so probably you can stay away from it or can put it as a buffer, not as the main line of thinking. If you know something about it, then it would be great. Okay, so give a few recent examples if possible. That will come in your description. Conclusion: whether to take a stand or not. Again, if it's a question, then of course you can take a stand. If it's a floating statement, then you will have to give options for whatever. You will have to give arguments for the topic, against the topic, and just close the discussion saying that we will do this, but we have to keep these things in mind. That's it. So I don't think it's that big an issue when it comes to essay and GK. Okay, but keep in mind the hygiene factor. That is the only thing I have to say regarding this. Grammatical errors, glaring spelling mistakes. You cannot really make spelling mistakes in that. So you can write in whatever easier words, and then probably you can just break down words if you're not very sure about the spelling and everything. Okay. One thing which I used to do is I used to write the flow of my essay on the question paper. So you will have your GK question paper with you probably. Even if you don't, probably you can write it down on your hall ticket or something like that. And probably after that you can write it on your actual paper. So generally when you try to write down for the first time, you try to meander. You will go here and there and probably get lost in between somewhere. So that does not really help. Okay. So just keep these pointers in mind when it comes to essay and GK. Preparation over the next 2 weeks, you have a good 13-14 days now to prepare. First thing that you need to do is solve all the previous year's papers. If you haven't solved everything, I think papers are available from 2008 till 2015-16. So I think you can solve all these papers. These are generally your best sources to prepare. You will get a lot of players who provide mocks. Even we have a tie-up and we provide mocks as well. But again, it's solely meant to be used as a tool to improve selection. So in that, selection plays an important role. So I will tell you how many questions to attempt and what to do in the next slide. But selection is very important in that. If you're not selecting the right questions, you're solving the wrong questions, then you will most probably you will end up in trouble. So again, whenever you're looking at mocks, do not get into solving each and every question. It will not help you. And a lot of times the mocks are abstract. So again, use it just to make sure that you are selecting the right question. So all your easy and moderate questions, you have to identify which one is easy, which one is moderate, and you have to be extremely good with selection. Again, the score, percentile, content, explanations, they will not really matter. Okay. So whatever we get here, right? Whatever scores we get, whatever percentiles we get, it does not really matter. Even if you get a 99.9% in your mock, it doesn't mean anything. Content, again, if someone asks you an extremely abstract, someone asks you some obscure topic, Seva's theorem or something, I don't think that is going to help you a lot. Explanations, again, if I know the original answer, I can justify almost anything from that paper, right? So explanations, those things do not really matter. Just make sure that you're selecting well. You are trying to go through each and every question and decide the merit of the question very well. That thing should be enough. Again, during prep, you will see a lot of questions, because simply if I want to make a difficult paper, I will try to put in a lot of difficult questions, which are straight away, I can look at them and say that these questions are difficult. So do not really get stuck on these questions, because these will be the questions which you will not be solving in that anyway. These will be your latter 25% of your difficult questions. So you will not be solving these questions anyway. So let go of these questions during prep. Do not really get stuck on these questions and ask yourself, why am I not being able to solve this, and whether it will impact my chances at that or not. It will not impact your chances. If you're not able to figure out the answer to a question and it looks stupid, then you have to assume or whatever. Most probably it will be stupid in the first place. Okay, so you need not worry about these kind of things. Again, yeah, this is a generic point. I think all of you know this. I don't know how many of you will implement this, but do not let your preparation be affected by your CAT performance. So CAT results, thankfully, they're not coming out by the time XAT will be conducted. Even your snap score will not be coming by the time your XAT will be conducted. So probably you are a bit better off compared to the previous years when your CAT results used to come out around about the time when your XAT used to be conducted. IFT, NMAT, MyCAT, you cannot really do anything about these papers now. Whatever your expected scores are, whatever your percentile predictors say, I don't really think that you should think too much about it, because that is again a different test. And it is not something which you can say that P, which you can say is something like a P implies Q. It does not imply anything. Okay, so do not let your performance in CAT affect your performance in XAT. Okay. Decision making and critical reasoning. LSAT questions will definitely help. As I said, LSAT questions, pay some attention to your LSAT questions. If you do not have LSAT questions, you can go to our CAT preparation group and search the CR questions, the hashtag CR questions. So there I had shared a lot of LSAT questions. So probably you can have a look at it. You will find a few forums wherever you will have LSAT questions discussed. So you need not worry about that. 101 ethical dilemmas helps in getting to know perspectives. Yeah, a lot of people will suggest 101 ethical dilemmas simply because it is the only book available in the market. Similar to what Word Power Made Easy is. So what WPME is to vocabulary, 101 ED is to decision making. I don't know how much it will help. I've never read that book. So I have read a couple of cases. I found it to be nice, but I don't know how much useful it will be when it comes to your actual XAT or actual decision making section. So it again depends on you. It's an easy read. It's not a very big book. I think it's some 150, 200 pages. I think it's not a huge book. Of course, there is a soft copy available. So yeah, I won't say anything beyond that. But especially considering that this video is going live, I will not say anything more than that. But again, if you want to, probably you can go ahead and read it. But I don't know. I haven't read it, and I have done well in this test, so I would not really recommend you to take it seriously. Again, people think that is a very difficult test. I think a lot of you think that is a very difficult test, and it's not really the case. It's similar to what CAT used to be in 2006, 2007, 2008 rather. And it's a simple aptitude test at the end of the day. You need to know your quant, you need to know your verbal ability, you need to be good at decision making, and that's about it. So you cannot really go on and on about XAT being a difficult, how XAT is a difficult paper and how people don't really score well in XAT. It's not really a good place to be mentally at least. Yeah. So again, as I said, you need to get some 32 on 80, approximately 80 marks. Approximately 32 is what you require. If it becomes 100, you will need to get. It's better if it's 100 because again you will need to get some 35, 36 marks. I think that is fair. Your toppers will score somewhere in the 50s. So I don't know, 45 to 50. So your aspirant toppers. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to put this aspirant over here. Your aspirant toppers will score somewhere in the 50s. So 45 to 50 marks is something which your best of aspirants will get. And so getting the 55-60% in this paper is not very difficult, to be very frank. So if you are struggling to get from that 20 to 25 zone into the 30s, then of course you have to look at the toppers who will already be in the 45s. So it's not impossible. It's possible to get a good score, but I think it's more of a mental block than anything else. The level of difficulty is not that high. You have to simply make sure that you are in the best frame of mind when you are taking this test. Okay. Regarding the overall strategy, again, sitting at one place for 3.5 hours would be more painful than it was for CAT, considering that this is after CAT. So CAT was probably one of the first tests of the season. So people had appeared for NMAT and probably, yeah, just NMAT, I guess. NMAT and IFT. And then they sat for CAT. So at that point in time, 3.5 was more exciting. People were fresh. But now, because a significant amount of the season has passed, sitting at one place for 3.5 hours is very painful, especially when you are sitting with a paper and a pen and you are trying to mark the OMR as well along with it. It becomes extremely painful and boring at times. So just make sure that you practice these things when you are taking mocks. Again, as I said, whatever scores you get in your mocks, it does not matter. Even if you get a 70, I don't think there is any takeaway from that, right? So practice sitting at one place for 3.5 hours, at least 2 or 50 minutes, whatever the duration is. Just make sure that you sit at one place. And again, stay stay at the same level throughout. Don't let the intensity drop. A lot of people get overawed by the paper. Again, even when people talk about XAT, they have this thing, right? So a lot of people will take XAT to a different level and say that the paper is different, or the paper is difficult, or the paper is insanely tough. It's not really the case. It's just another test at the end of the day, and the performance is relative, right? So it does not really matter if it's difficult or easy or whatever. If it's difficult for everyone. If it's easy for everyone. Yeah, again, 2 hours 50 minutes, people tend to think that it's too much of time, so I can probably give 10-15 minutes to a DI set. Not really the case. If you get stuck, you lose momentum, and it will probably start to collapse at that point in time. So do not get stuck. At least in your first round, make sure that you're attempting all the easy questions quickly, and then probably you can come back to the questions which you feel will take time. Do not get stuck in at any point in time. Okay. 4 or 5 consecutive questions, there might be stretches when you will not be able to get 4, 5, 6 questions at a stretch, even 10 questions sometimes at a stretch. Do not worry, because again, you need to solve around 60% of the paper, as I said here, right? So if there are 80 questions, you need to solve somewhere around 45, 50 questions, I would say, to be on the safer side. If you're solving somewhere around 50 questions, your accuracy is somewhere around 75%. 37 correct, 13 wrong. I think you will get somewhere around 33, 34 marks, which is good. Okay, so 40 to 45% of the paper is something that you should aim for, considering how XAT has been behaving over the years. But again, if you're attempting 60% of the paper, you can be sure that out of 5 questions, you will not be attempting 2 questions. So even if you are at a particular phase, you are in a particular phase wherein you are not attempting 4 or 5 questions, I think it's fine. Generally, a split of 45 is fine. So 135 minutes there, and whatever remaining 30-35 minutes, whatever you have after marking the OMR and everything, that can be used as a buffer. So this final 30 odd minutes will decide how ahead of the cutoffs you are. So your cutoffs will get cleared in the first 135 minutes, is what I feel. So 135 minutes is more than enough to get into your 30s. After that, whatever you do will decide how far ahead of the cutoffs you will be. Yeah, so that is something which you can plan for. Negative marks for the unattempted questions, I don't know. It was too low last time. I think it was some 1/6 of a mark or something, which did not really make any sense. Plus, you will have a buffer of some 13 odd questions. So 13 questions you can solve without being worried about it, and then you will start getting negatives. I don't know. If they wanted to make sure that you are on your toes, then probably they should have kept it extremely close to your incorrect answers. And then probably it would have been a bit more fun. But 1/6 does not really worry me a lot. Especially if you have a buffer, then again, I will stop worrying about unattempted questions right away. If I'm attempting 50, I'm not attempting 30. If my first 13 questions are waved off, out of 17, I will probably lose some 3 marks or something, which does not really worry me, if that is the case. Okay. So again, do not worry about these kind of things. Just keep that in mind, right? If your negative marks for unattempted questions, go above the negative marks for incorrect answers. So for incorrect answers, if you're getting -1/3, and for your unattempted questions, you are getting -1/2, then obviously it makes sense for you to attempt each and every question and make sure that you are losing out -1/3 in the worst case and not -1/2. But again, as I said, it's not something that is likely to happen. But have your gambler's hat ready. Do not really go into the test thinking that you will solve it using the conventional +3 -1 strategy or +1 -1/3 strategy. Just make sure that you are looking at it with an open mind and be ready to gamble in case there is a need to do it. Yeah, number of questions, of course, it can change, right? So you can never really be sure. Even if they release the OMR sheet and say that the total number of questions is some 123 or something, or they show 123 bubbles, you cannot be sure that there will be 123 questions, because that has been notorious for that as well. They might give you 100 questions and the remaining 23 bubbles will remain empty or something like that. So there is no takeaway unless they release the first page of the paper as they did last year. I don't think there is any takeaway. There will be a lot of rumors before the test, during the test, after the test, saying that they haven't specified the marks per question, or they said that one third of the total marks is the penalty, so we don't know how many marks will we be evaluated out of or something. All these things are something which should not be taken seriously, and I would suggest that you again just look at it from the entertainment point of view and not really take it seriously and get affected by it. And again, be ready for surprises. Be ready for surprises, because that has been known to throw up a few surprises, be it with regard to question types or number of questions or negative marking, progressive negative marking, whatever. So there can be anything. There can be n number of things that can happen in the test. Just make sure that you have visualized a few scenarios before the test. Again, as I told a lot of you before CAT as well. Visualize scenarios beforehand. So not really get, as in do not get stuck, or do not get into this thing that I'm seeing this for the first time. Do not get worried because you're seeing something for the first time. You have to be, as in you have to expect that there will be a few things that you will see for the first time in this SAT paper. So if you go with that kind of a mindset, I think you should be fine. And end of the day, I think it's about the mindset more than it's about prep. I hadn't prepared for SAT in all my 3 attempts. So I've taken SAT 3 times, twice during my serious attempt and once last year as a test candidate. But then again, I haven't prepared for SAT. Even during my serious attempts, I hadn't really prepared for SAT that much. And I just took 1 or 2 mock tests. I scored fairly okay in those 2 mock tests, and I had my strategy in place. That was the only thing that I did. I never went for 101 ethical dilemmas, or even LSAT material is something that I figured out last year. It was not something which I used during my prep, so I don't know how much it will be helpful, but I found it to be at a better level than, say, your CAT CR material. So I think if you do these things, it should help you a bit when it comes to that. And yeah, in case you have any questions or something, you can just let me know. Probably I will cover it. Any questions, except the cutoffs for institutes, because that we will be able to figure out once your XAT is done. So I cannot really go out on a limb and say that you need to get 32 marks, because then it will be painful if you can't. Yeah. So if there are any questions, just let me know. You can either speak out or you can put it on chat. And if there are no questions, then we can close this session. So, is there anything?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, is Parag here?
Yeah, Parag.
So, how many mocks to attempt in these 14 mocks to give?
Okay. So now that we have some 13 days, I would suggest some 3 or 4 mocks should be more than enough, plus your previous year's art papers. So you can attempt 1 mock every alternate day and probably analyze it. Now, when I say analyze it, just go through the level of difficulty. And if there is some question which your institute has said is easy and you have found it difficult, then you probably need to work on that content bit. That is the only thing that you need to do. Just make sure that you are utilizing your time very well, and whatever, your selection is pretty good. If you're focusing on those 2 things, then I think this should be fine. But I think 3 or 4 mocks is more than enough in the coming 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay. So when it comes to attempting the section, so we have this question on a particular way of attempting the section. So when it comes to attempting sections, I don't know if there is any particular way, because it's such a long test. It does not really matter where you start, what you start from. Okay. So generally, it's always better if you start from something which you are fluent at, and not something which you get stuck in, because you don't really want to get stuck in right at the start of it. What I used to do is, again, I used to start whatever. As in, I didn't really go with a fixed strategy that I will attempt quant or something like that. But generally, I used to start with LR or DM, because it would be interesting right at the start. So again, that is a morning test, right? So I'm not really someone who likes morning tests. So I used to start with your arithmetic reasoning, analytical reasoning, or decision making, those kind of questions. And probably once I get into the flow, then I will go to verbal and then probably take quant right at the end. Because quant is something which I know that I will be able to figure out even if there is less time left. But you cannot really solve DM in a current situation. So whatever you do, I think you should keep your DM at the first or the second position, as much as far as I can think of. And quant and verbal you can build around that. So just make sure that DM is 1 or 2 in your list, and not right at the end when probably things are getting a bit tense. So that is the only thing. Again, you can try out various ways in which you want to solve the paper section wise during your mocks, but I don't think there is anything else that you need to worry about. Okay, I think there are no further questions. I hope. If there's anything, then probably we can cover it later on the group as well. Yeah, so I will just um, end this session then. Okay, great. So Merry Christmas, all of you. I hope you are preparing well, and I hope you do well in XAT. Whatever happens in CAT, SNAP, IFT, I don't really, you should not really worry about these things, and probably give it your best shot. It's a very interesting paper. You will find it very nice to read, and you will find it very interesting. Okay, so great. Have fun. Have a nice week ahead of you. Have a very happy new year, and probably we will share a few things during this week as well. We will start this ad sprint from tomorrow. So I think you can stay tuned and probably solve a few questions from that as well. So great. So all the best. Prepare well, and Merry Christmas again. Thank you.